He thought breaking her heart would end the story. She thought loving him was her weakness. But neither of them knew that one broken heart could someday shatter an entire world. He never noticed how gently she loved him. To him, her love was always available, like air, present but invisible, necessary but ignored. She stayed when he was distant, smiled when he was cold, and forgave even when forgiveness slowly emptied her. He mistook her patience for weakness and her loyalty for obligation. He believed that because she loved him deeply, she would always remain, no matter how careless he became. She gave her love in quiet ways. In the way she listened when he spoke about his dreams, even when he never asked about hers. In the way she adjusted her world around his moods, his time, his priorities. She learned the art of waiting. Waiting for messages, waiting for apologies, waiting for moments when he would finally choose her the way she chose him every day. And while she waited, she convinced herself that love required endurance, that loving him meant accepting less. He never saw the cost of that love. He didn't see how often she questioned her worth after his indifference. How she replayed his words at night, searching for meaning in sentences that carried none. He didn't notice how she defended him to others, how she hid her hurt behind smiles, how she turned her loneliness into loyalty just so he wouldn't feel accused. To him, love was comfortable. To her, it was constant effort. He made promises without understanding their weight. He canceled plans as if her time had no value. He spoke carelessly, knowing she would stay silent. Every time he chose himself over her, she swallowed the pain and called it love. She kept believing that if she loved harder, he would love better. She became predictable in her devotion, and predictability made her invisible. He grew used to her presence, so used to it that he forgot love needs care, attention, and respect to survive. He never imagined a day where she would stop giving, stop forgiving, stop understanding. Because when love is taken for granted, it doesn't disappear suddenly. It fades slowly, piece by piece, in moments that seem small but carve deep wounds, in days where effort is one-sided, in nights where one heart is awake while the other sleeps peacefully, believing everything will remain the same. The moment her heart shattered didn't arrive with chaos or loud pain. It came softly, wrapped in disappointment, disguised as another ordinary moment where she needed him and he chose not to be there. It was in his voice when he spoke without warmth, in his eyes when they no longer searched for hers, in the way he dismissed her feelings as if they were an inconvenience rather than a confession of love. That moment didn't hurt because it was cruel, it hurt because it was familiar. She had prepared herself for pain without realizing it. Every ignored message, every delayed reply, every promise left unfinished had been teaching her how to break slowly. When he finally said the words that cut deepest, they didn't shock her. They confirmed what her heart had been fearing for a long time. That she loved him more than he loved her. That she was holding on while he was already letting go. Her heart didn't shatter all at once. It fractured. A piece broke when he chose silence over reassurance. Another piece fell away when he made her feel dramatic for wanting clarity. Another cracked when he laughed off her tears, unaware that those tears carried every emotion she had been suppressing to keep the peace. Each fragment carried a memory of how she once believed love meant being chosen every day. She tried to speak. She tried to explain how deeply his words wounded her, how his absence felt heavier than his presence. But he listened with impatience, already convinced that love shouldn't require this much effort. In that moment, she realized she was fighting alone for something that was meant to be shared. The pain wasn't just heartbreak. It was humiliation. Humiliation in realizing she had begged for basic care. Humiliation in recognizing that she had lowered her standards just to keep him close. Humiliation in understanding that the love she protected was never protected in return. Her heart shattered under the weight of loving someone who didn't fear losing her. She walked away from that moment quieter than she arrived. No accusations, no dramatic goodbye, just a deep ache settling into her chest as she accepted the truth she could no longer avoid. That the love she gave so freely had been slowly breaking her, that staying would mean losing herself completely, that sometimes hearts don't shatter because love ends, but because it is no longer returned in the way it was promised. After her heart shattered, she didn't collapse the way people expected her to. There was no public breakdown, no dramatic confessions, no visible anger. Instead, she went quiet. Her silence wasn't emptiness, it was protection. She learned that explaining her pain only made her feel smaller, so she chose to hold it inside and turn it into strength. In that quiet, she began to listen to herself for the first time. She stopped reaching out first. Not because she didn't care, but because she was tired of chasing someone who never turned around. Each unanswered message taught her restraint. Each ignored feeling taught her boundaries. Slowly, she reclaimed the energy she once poured into saving a love that was never drowning for him. Her silence became a language he didn't understand. She learned how to sit with loneliness without letting it break her. Nights were still heavy, but she no longer begged the darkness for comfort from someone who had become a stranger. She cried when she needed to, but she didn't stay there. Every tear felt different now, less desperate, more cleansing. Pain stopped being something she ran from and became something she learned from. Strength didn't arrive all at once. It grew quietly. She started choosing herself in small ways. Saying no when something hurt. Walking away when something felt wrong. She stopped apologizing for needing love, respect, and effort. What once felt like fear of losing him slowly transformed into fear of losing herself again. That fear was sharper, wiser, and impossible to ignore. Her transformation wasn't loud. People didn't notice right away. But those who paid attention saw it in her posture, in the way she spoke with certainty, in the way her eyes no longer searched for validation. She wasn't hardened by pain. She was refined by it. Love had wounded her, but it had also taught her where her limits lived. She no longer explained her absence. She no longer justified her distance. She no longer carried guilt for choosing peace over chaos. What he mistook for indifference was actually self-respect. What he called coldness was simply the warmth she stopped giving to someone who never protected it. Her silence was no longer waiting, it was moving forward. And within that silence, she rebuilt herself piece by piece, learning that love should never require self-destruction, that strength can be gentle and quiet, and that sometimes the most powerful transformation happens when no one is watching. Her absence didn't hit him immediately. At first, it felt like relief. No questions, no emotional conversations, no expectations waiting for him at the end of the day. He told himself this was what freedom felt like. He filled the space with noise, distractions, and familiar routines, believing her silence was temporary. Believing she would return the way she always had. But absence has a way of growing louder with time. He began to notice the quiet in places she once lived. His phone stayed still, no messages asking if he had eaten, no reminders spoken with care. The small comforts he never acknowledged now stood out sharply, like missing pieces in a familiar picture. He reached for her in moments of weakness and found only emptiness. Regret didn't arrive dramatically. It crept in. It came late at night when the world slowed down and distractions lost their power. It came when he remembered how she listened without judgment, how she stayed even when he made it difficult, how she believed in him when he doubted himself. Those memories replayed without permission, heavier now that they belonged to the past. He realized too late that her love had been a shelter. While he took it for granted, it protected him quietly, holding him together in ways he never recognized. Without it, the world felt harsher, colder, less forgiving. The strength he thought he had was exposed as borrowed comfort. He tried to reach out. Carefully at first, then desperately, but her silence answered him in ways words never could. Each unanswered message mirrored the neglect he once showed her. Each ignored call reflected the distance he created. For the first time, he felt the weight of waiting, the ache of uncertainty, the helplessness of wanting reassurance that never comes. Her absence forced him to sit with himself. Without her understanding to soften his flaws, he was left alone with them. The confidence he once carried began to crack, replaced by questions he had avoided for too long. How did he lose someone who loved him so deeply, and why didn't he fight when he had the chance? He understood then that losing her wasn't just losing a person. It was losing the version of life where love was patient, forgiving, and unconditional. Her absence became the lesson he never asked for but could no longer escape, a reminder that some losses don't scream, they echo endlessly through every quiet moment. Regret did not arrive when he expected it to. It didn't come the day she left or the moment he noticed her absence. It arrived much later, when the damage was already done and time had created an unbridgeable distance between who they were and who they could have been. Regret has a cruel sense of timing, and it chose the moment when apologies no longer had a place to land. He began to understand everything in reverse. Her silence made sense. Her distance became clear. Her tears, once dismissed, now replayed in his mind with painful clarity. Every moment he minimized her feelings returned as a memory that refused to fade. He saw himself through her eyes for the first time, and it was a reflection he could no longer ignore. He wanted to explain, not to defend himself, but to be understood. But understanding required presence, and he had already lost that privilege. The words he once withheld now crowded his chest, heavy and useless. He realized that timing matters in love, and remorse spoken too late sounds empty, no matter how sincere it is. He searched for her in familiar places, in old conversations, in memories that once felt safe. He imagined different endings, better choices, softer words. Each imagined moment carried the same truth: he had every chance to protect her heart and chose not to. Regret grew not from losing her, but from knowing he was the reason she had to leave. The world no longer responded to him the way it used to. Without her belief in him, his victories felt hollow. Without her voice encouraging him, his confidence wavered. He began to understand how much of his strength had been rooted in her love, how much of his world had been built on something he never secured. He tried to move forward, but regret has weight. It followed him quietly, settling into moments that should have been joyful. Laughter felt incomplete. Success felt lonely. Even new connections felt distant, because none of them carried the depth he once dismissed. He finally understood the cost of losing someone who loved without conditions. Not everyone leaves to punish you, some leave to survive. And when that realization arrived, it came with a truth that could not be undone: that love does not wait forever, that hearts do not break loudly when they are truly done, and that some lessons arrive only after the door has closed and the world you knew no longer exists.